All right, today we're going to be showing how you can use GitHub's Agentic Workflows to build an auto triaging agent. So, what is this agent actually going to do? You can see here that I have this plan, implement, and review workflow that is completely separate from what we're working on today. But you'll notice here that a planner agent creates a plan, it gets passed to the implementer, and then it goes to a reviewer. That reviewer is going to say, is the implementation approved or not? If it's approved, the workflow just ends. Otherwise, it gets sent back to the implementer. And you can see here there's no stop condition for this loop. So if the reviewer always says the implementation is incomplete, it will cause an infinite loop. So with an auto triage agent, what I want to do is I want to be able to create an issue, and you can see here potential infinite loop. I want to say when this issue gets created, I want it to auto assign the correct label. In this case, I should be labeling it a bug. Alternatively, let's say I wanted to add a testing agent to what I was building. I may want to actually add a enhancement label or something similar. Similar, we could add documentation label or something else. Really, the crux of the problem today is when I create an issue, I want an agent to go out and automatically label it for me so that by the time a developer looks at this, they have an idea for what category this issue is going to be. Now, doing that's going to actually be really easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to build out an agentic workflow. And all an agentic workflow is a way to autonomously trigger an agent. In our case, what we're going to be doing for an agentic workflow. So what you're going to see is if we give it a name, and the name's just going to be auto triage. And here's where the first important part comes. When does this agent execute? So in our case, this agent is going to execute when issues are opened. Fantastic. And what I actually want to do is take that quotation out. So you can see when issues are opened, this agent will execute. Next step we need, what is this agent actually able to go and do? In our case, the only permissions it needs is to be able to read the content. So you can see issues write is incorrect. We just want contents read. So that's going to be permission. So what is the agent allowed to access? Next is networking. So what can the agent access in terms of URLs? So what GitHub Agentic Workflows has is some catch-all qualifications. So you can hear, obviously, defaults just enables all the defaults. That should happen without it being put there, but we're going to put it explicitly because we're doing networking. Second is the GitHub domains. So this is going to let us look at issues, access the REST API for GitHub, stuff like that. Finally, the second important part is safe outputs. So we already said when does the trigger happen? So it is when a new issue is opened. Now we need to say what is the agent outputting? In our case, this safe output should be labels, right? We want to add labels. So we're going to just use the add labels output. And you can build these custom, but there are a bunch that come default with GitHub Agentic Workflows. And what we're going to do here is say the max we want to allow is 5. So 5 labels. So if we want to have a issue that let's say has both a bug and an enhancement request in it, now we can put multiple labels on. We're not just stuck to one label. That's why. But we don't want it to be too many, which is why we set a sensible maximum. Finally, timeout minutes. So in the case something goes wrong or it's taking too long, we want to make sure this times out at some point. Basically, you get charged on these based on your GitHub Actions minutes consumption, and we want to make sure we're not having something that just runs for days and is going to run up a bill. Finally, the next important part here is going to be the prompt. So for the sake of brevity, I just copy and pasted the prompts here, and you're going to just see that the objective, we want to triage all new, and in this case, we're actually not going to be doing edited issues as well, just all new issues by applying the appropriate labels. And when the issue is opened, we're going to analyze issue, apply appropriate labels. There we are. And you're going to see now, we're going to analyze the issue, classify the issue, and apply labels. So also one thing to note is if for some reason the issue doesn't contain enough information for the model to easily be able to say, hey, this is what the label needs to be, we're just going to add a need triagers label to say, we need a person to still go and look at this. All right, fantastic. So we're going to save that. And what you're going to notice is we have a markdown file with just some front matter. So GitHub Actions does not know how to interpret this. So how do we actually get this to something that GitHub Actions can execute? And that's the crux of what the agentic workflows are for GitHub. Really, it is this framework that can be transpiled into a traditional GitHub Actions workflow. So we're going to jump here. I'm going to open up new terminal. And what I'm going to do is I already have the Agentic Workflows terminal utility installed. So what that means is I should be able to go, and we'll actually use it from the command prompt directly, is I can go GitHub, which is the GitHub terminal interface, AW, which is Agentic Workflows. I want to compile my Auto Triage. Let's go click enter there. And it looks like we have an issue. Usually, I think this needs to be plural, so we're just going to run that one more time after editing that. And you're going to see we've properly compiled it, no warnings. And this is what GitHub actually ends up running. So this is the transpiled version of what we just built. You can see when an issue is opened, and this is also the reason we don't do this natively in GitHub Actions. It's just because to do everything that GitHub Actions does, which is sandboxing and adding a bunch of security and governance around these agents running, it takes a lot of work. You can see we're at 1100 lines, which is going to be a lot more effort than if we include the total prompt, the 100 or so lines we have. So, all right, fantastic. What we're going to do is we're just going to commit and push that up to the main branch, and we're going to be able to actually see this in action. So I'm going to commit, sync changes. Finally, what I'm going to do is jump back up onto GitHub, and you're going to see here, once that's been pushed, we have our infinite loop and loops created. We should probably add some more details, but I'm just going to keep it basic because it's a demo. I'm going to click create here. And now you can see no issues have actually been labeled here. This means that the agent needs to run and actually do the labeling. In this case here, you can see this is very clearly a bug. So we should hopefully see that this gets labeled as a bug. Now, if all things worked correctly, we're going to go to our Actions tab, and you're going to see Auto Triage is queued up to run. So Agentic Workflows, you don't see it on the Markdown file you build, but when you compile it, it actually turns it into 6 separate steps. So pre-activation, activation, agent, detection, safe outputs, and conclusion. The important things you need to worry about are agent. That step or that job specifically is when the agent actually runs, looks through your code base, and says we need to add these labels. Now, it's going to use a tool to go and add those labels, but what safe outputs does is it caches the output of that tool call and doesn't actually do it until the safe output step. So once it reaches here, basically it takes the JSON that the agent emitted, and then it actually uses that to actually go and add the label. So just an important thing to note there. And that's really just sandboxing for security. You can see here, we're starting up. Now this is just traditional actions, install everything, download the container agent or container image. And eventually what we're going to see is we have a agent execution that's going to happen. It's going to, you can see execute GitHub Copilot CLI. It's going to go and explore our code base. And from that, it's going to determine, or not even explore our code base in this case, because it can do that. In this case, it's going to look at the issue and determine what labels need to be added. It's going to then use the add label safe output, which is just going to cache that tool call, and it's not actually going to add the labels until later on in the safe output step. And here we go, we can see it executing. And what we're going to see in just a couple minutes now is that we are able to just easily turn that markdown, compile it into a GitHub action using Agentic Workflows, and now we have this auto triage set up in just a few minutes. You can see the agents already ran, there's some cleanup steps going on, and very soon we should see the safe output step is going to actually run. One other thing you can notice here is you can see the base workflow file if you do want to. It's not the most readable, so I typically don't recommend that you need to look at this. Alternatively, you can go directly to the agentic workflow file, which is not here. It's going to be back in here. And this is what is more readable and what's actually executing. So we have a prompt and then the markdown we wrote ourselves. You can see detection here is another security step. What this basically does is it runs a separate agent to say, hey, in any of these safe outputs, is there any potential security vulnerabilities we're going to be introducing? For example, if we were instead adding a comment to the issue, we probably would not add a comment that somehow had a key that was secret getting into that comment. So this is just going to say, kill the process in the case that that is occurring. So make sure nothing happens. These safe outputs do not actually happen. In our case, we're just adding a label, which is not going to cause that issue. You can see here, safe outputs are now starting to run. We're going to jump back into issues because I want to show you this actually running. So in potential infinite loop, you can see right here, we have no labels as of yet. Safe outputs is currently running. And in just a second, when I refresh, we should now see that there is a bug label added. So if I refresh, hopefully it's done. Doesn't look to have been completely finished. There it is. Okay, we've added a bug. So auto triage now means we can do all of that. Alternatively, let's say I went here and said new issue, and instead of an infinite loop, I say I need to add a testing agent and just say I need to add a testing agent. Well, I'm going to do that. And what you would end up seeing if we let this fully run is that the agent would go, and this time it's an enhancement. And based on the prompt we gave the agentic workflow, we have documentation, bug, and enhancement, as well as needs triage. And in this case, it would also just do enhancement. So that's how it's working. And this means that now your developers can just create the issues as they normally do. Don't need to worry about labeling. It will get automatically labeled. And this opens up a door for a lot of future things. For example, let's say the issue gets labeled as a bug. Well, we could have a separate agentic workflow go investigate the bug, comment back on the issue what the most likely cause of the bug, and if it has a high confidence it's going to be able to fix the bug, then that agent can actually go and open up a pull request with all the changes. And so in the best case, what's going to happen is we create a new issue, it gets labeled as a bug, and by the time a developer actually gets to that issue to actually try to go and solve the bug, there's already a pull request open. They can just review and approve to have that bug completed. So just think how much time that's going to be saving you as a developer. And so that's agentic workflows and building an auto triage agent in a nutshell. In future sessions, we're going to build a automatic bug fixer. So it's going to actually take from the auto triage agent, which is then going to label it a bug. And then we're going to add the next step, which is now saying, if it's a bug, try to go out and fix that bug without any human intervention. And that's really the power of continuous AI, because here, all I'm doing is adding an issue, and that's it. I'm not prompting an agent. I'm not dispatching an agent. I'm not in my IDE calling GitHub Copilot. I'm just creating an issue like I normally would, and continuous AI is integrating with the work I already do to help drive some efficiencies there.